Okay.
Again, I don't have to tell her to do it.
All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Douglas Kellner, co-chair of the Board of Elections. I ask the other commissioners to introduce themselves.
Jim Welch, Gregory Peterson.
Evelyn Aquila.
And I will ask the staff to identify themselves.
Robert Brown.
Liz Hogan.
Bill McCann.
Anna Savitsma.
Joe Burns.
John Conklin.
Dave Loomis.
Paul Collins.
Todd Valentine.
And our,
Bob Warren.
and then we'll ask the guests to identify themselves and their organizations. Dennis, why don't you start?
Dennis Ward, Commissioner, Erie County Board of Elections, and my wife, Michelle.
Amy Allo, League of Women Voters of New York State.
John Leto, Election Systems and Software.
Josh Oppenheimer, Greenberg Short.
Thank you all. And a special welcome to Dave Loomis, our new Information Technology Director. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you.
All right, so first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of June 12, 2012. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are adopted. Now we'll have the unit updates. We'll start with the co-executive directors, Bob Brown and Todd Valentine.
Well, the last couple of weeks have been interesting with the federal primary and the petitioning for state and local candidates. It's been very busy, with all of the activity leading up to today. It was a little bit different having the Congress out of the way in order to get our work done, but still it was a challenge with the number of objections that we had in order, and it was pretty much the entire agency chipping in to make that happen. In addition, as you mentioned, the new head of the IT department started during the period of time since our last meeting, and it's been a welcome addition to the staff, and we wish David well. Todd and I have been meeting weekly with David just to go over, I think it's almost like jumping in the deep end, the work that's involved, and we wish him well in every success. Some of the highlights of the activity in our last several weeks, we did complete the filing with the state of our internal control report, and that's an annual review that we do, and that is on file. We did the last leg, I think, of our restacking. When we moved into this space, there were a number of punch-up items. The staff from the restacking group met with us, and we went through that final list, and they're in progress. But the last phase was to move the warehouse from Manans to this building, and they were all busy doing everything else. They finally came around to meet with us to identify specific space in the basement. There's 2 areas that'll be ready and caged, and then we'll be able to mostly move the stuff from Manans that is of value. It's really, it's almost an out of sight, out of mind kind of a storage. There was probably a number of items that were there that over time could have been removed that we really didn't need to keep. So it's a matter of destroying what we don't really need to keep and moving here. And from a functional point of view, I think it'll be easier because we don't have to coordinate going to Manans once a week or a special trip. It'll just be in the same building. Other than that, Todd, do you have
No, those are the big updates. The other projects that we did as far as the petitions were to do, in response to requests for copies, was to implement a scanning project. So the copies were scanned, and the idea behind that was, well, yes, there was an investment in scanners, but since it was costing the agency money in paper and wear and tear on the copiers to actually make the photocopies, it's going to save us money in the long run by providing digital copies of the petitions. And while we haven't tallied how well it went, I mean, anecdotally, from the people who received the copies and from our staff, the processing, went very smoothly. So that's something we're going to continue to work on to perfect. I mean, there's always wrinkles with rolling something out so close to when you need it, but by and large, I think that was successful.
Great. Anything else? All right, then we'll hear from legal, Kim Galvin.
Kim is in court, so I guess we'll have to turn it over to Paul.
Yeah, the report pretty well stands for itself. A couple of 3 items that are not in the report because they came subsequent to the filing of our report is that in that case in which Mr. Jermalik is challenging the ban on out-of-state petitioners, which the circuit dismissed, he has filed a writ of certiorari with the Supreme Court of the United States, and quite honestly, they don't regularly grant those writs. Also, in the Schultz case, in which Mr. Schultz is challenging the use of any voting machine, be it Lieber or electronic, the 3-judge panel threw him out, and he has moved for an en banc or entire court reconsideration, and that motion is pending. And again, that's not a motion that is regularly granted. And Kim is over in Supreme Court enjoying herself with various cases.
Paul, one of the items on the unit report was that New York City is working on updating the Nysboe registration records. And would you just briefly summarize what's going on there and what the estimated date is for New York City to be in full
I'm not certain that
compliance?
there is a precise date for them to be completely in compliance at this point in time. What's going on is we're feeding them the reports and they're putting them in, and we hope to have, at least by the end of the year, a projected date at which they shall be in full compliance. Tom?
My understanding was that they were actually going to have that system implemented by the end of the year.
Yes.
But if
I don't know
that's
if you
not-
want David to speak
Yeah.
to that. I know it's one of the projects that he's been monitoring because it's a priority that we've discussed with them. And I know his unit has regularly been updating on that.
Right, I can talk just generally about it at this point. There's 2 major projects that we're working on: the Move Back Data Exchange, and the ability for the felon deceased files to get updated. Sorry. What we've been trying to do is work to test the Move Back changes, and then we're at the same time attempting to test the changes for the New York City file maintenance. The changes that we've done on our end are out and ready to go, and we're trying to coordinate testing schedules with them, with NTIER and New York City. So we're trying to do both projects at the same time, but the goal is still to have that done by the end of the year.
So that's the important news, that they will be in compliance by the end of the year.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's what they hope.
Okay, anything else for legal? Then we'll turn to election operations. Ms. Fitzgerald?
Well, we're just a bundle of information in election ops. Our report does speak for itself. We don't have much to add to it, except that under new business, I'm afraid we will not be able to certify upgrades to the voting systems, but we can address that under new business rather than within the context of the monthly report, if you like, whatever the board's pleasure. We are about to wrap up the first portion of the grant that we got from the EAC regarding test tech training. The final edits were submitted. We're very pleased with the DVD that was created. County boards will be able to have their staff trained. We can do face-to-face training, but it's nice to have something to go back and refresh staff, use it to train new staff. They'll be able to put it on a computer and stop and pause it, review a process within the test deck. And test decks are so critical to ensuring that the election is conducted appropriately that we feel that it's been worth the time we've put into it. And as I said, we're very happy with the DVD. As soon as those final edits are done, which we're expecting in the very near future, we'll make a copy of that DVD available to all of you. We have to submit it to the EAC, and make it available to any state that that chooses to. We'll post it to the county informational portal that we have for the county boards, and we'll also provide them a hard DVD for their use. The second part of that is automating the post-election audit process, which is going very well. We will be going to Boston to do some on-site review with that vendor. The vendor's name, the corporate name is Clear Ballot, and the gentleman that runs that firm has been working hand in hand with our folks on this process. When we go to Boston, we'll certainly let you know if anybody wants to come along. It might be something that you're interested in, but we'll share that date with you, and we'll make those travel arrangements accordingly. I don't think I have anything else to add. Do you, Joe?
Just to mention, and I think Bob and Todd mentioned already that we, for the first time, scanned in petitions, and we owe a big thanks to Bob Warren and John Ferry and the whole team for making that what I think was a wild success. On the topic of ballot redesign, I think we've received for the September primary 2 counties ballots, and we expect over the next few weeks to get everybody else in. That's where we stand on that.
I had a couple of other issues I wanted to raise with election operations. At the Election Commissioners Conference, there were a couple of inquiries about revising the Election Commissioners Handbook. Can you report on that, Anna?
We are about halfway through. We have all the units in the building. They've submitted their rewrites to us. We shared those with the ad hoc committee that the association assigned us to work through those, and we have 4 chapters of that guide that have been reviewed by those commissioners, and their comments are on record with us too. We have to find the time to compile it and bring that up to speed. We're hoping by maybe year's end that guide will be completely finished with the input from those county board commissioners, because that will take some time for them as well. We did offer, we have offered in the past. We've had 2 boards contact us, Herkimer and I can't remember the other. We've invited boards here if they're brand new commissioners, and Herkimer does have that scenario that they're welcome to come here and spend the day with us and meet with unit heads, that have project areas that are of concern to those new commissioners, and we would spend the day with them. One of the big things is the petition process, but we would go through everything that was of concern to them or interest to them, and any, obviously, information that we wanted to be sure they were on board with. So we have heard from a couple of boards, and we expect that they'll be coming to visit us, and that might be a good program to have a little one-on-one and not have them fearful of comments made in a bigger group. Everybody thinks they have a dumb question, and we believe there is no such thing as a dumb question. So we're hoping that that'll be a nice face-to-face for us as unit heads, and especially in the ops area.
Next question was on the status of electronic poll books. Is there anything being certified, and have you had any communications with any vendors on the subject of electronic poll books?
We have not officially been approached by vendors with a product that they'd like us to review. Erie County did a little ad hoc pilot project with electronic poll books. Orange County did one last year. We did get a report from Orange County. I think they were generally pleased with it. We here at the State Board have issues with what the statute requires and what an electronic poll book does or doesn't do. But since the vendors haven't really submitted a product to us to review, it's hard to assess how that system functions and where it runs contrary to the election law. We do have that feedback. Erie, both commissioners were kind enough to come and speak to us face-to-face about their experiences, and Orange County did a written report last year.
And the statutory issue is just that the law now provides for a hard copy registration poll book,
At the poll
and
site.
doesn't explicitly authorize an electronic version, right?
It does many places in the statute where it speaks to an electronic list or blah, 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 except at the poll site on election day. So if we, so there would be a little,
So it's
little
just a
word
couple of words, right?
to say, or an electronic list for
So
those counties that may
is
want
it feasible to get a draft bill that we could look at our next meeting? And
Well,
have the commissioners consider whether it should be on the, on our legislative proposals?
I don't know who you're asking for that information.
What?
I guess my concern in the poll book area is the statute speaks to adding information to a poll book, logging, whether a voter has to present ID. Does the electronic poll book give you a chance to do that? It requires you to add to the poll book the address of a mover who's moving within the ED on election day. That's added to the poll book. I don't know that these electronic poll books enable all of those features that the statute requires, and if they do or don't, do you want to remove the statutory requirement for that, or do you want them to amend their software, which I am loath to say out loud?
Or do it on paper?
Right,
Exactly. Is there a companion sort of poll book?
Well, you put a button that says "see paper."
Again, without seeing the product and being able to go through it ourselves, and absent any submission to that degree, it's hard to say what we would change.
But should we get ahead of the curve, especially if it's not complicated to do the legislation? If it's complicated, I understand, because there are more important legislative issues that I'd rather be working on the...
It's the next progression for us, and I think we all agree that there is tremendous value to having an electronic poll book. Again, you need a fail-safe at the county board level. What happens if that poll book doesn't work when you get it to the polling place? Things like that administratively, operationally, we'd have to look at. But we all like the concept. We think there's much value to it, but have not had the chance to assess the product or review it, compare it to the statute exactly.
All right, so I've raised it. I've sort of put it on the to-do list. And,
I feel it's difficult this year with the presidential election and everything else that's going on. And we don't have a huge staff. I mean, we have to be practical.
We'll share with you the Orange County report, and if Erie did a written report, I don't remember that you did the follow-up. When we asked Orange to do the report, we asked you guys, but I don't ever remember getting one. Doesn't mean you didn't do one. But if Erie has one they could send, we'll make those available to the commissioners, and we'll do a narrative on our own from ops and just give you an idea of where we're at, and maybe that would help in the amending legislation end of things.
Right.
Well, like the chairman said, it's on the to-do list, but yes, I'm sure Annie, you have so many other to-dos before that.
This one I would like.
All right, last on my little list of elections operations issues are projects in certification. Right now, am I correct that we are not listing our certification applications on the internet?
The applications are on the internet, yes.
So, where are they?
There are links from our homepage
To,
the individual vendor applications.
and what applications do we have pending right now?
I'm not sure.
My understanding is that there are 4.
The 2 central counts and the 2 upgrades.
Is that it? And all 4 of them are posted?
Yes.
Okay. I'll have to go through it with you, Terry, after the meeting, see if I can find it.
do a print screen. Okay, someone. Just go to the website, print it.
Pardon?
I just asked her to go have someone print the screen so we will know before the end of the meeting.
Well, it's just the path to it, that's all.
Right.
All right. So that's my list on election operations. Anybody? Okay, thank you. So now we go to NBRA Public Information. John Conklin.
Thank you, Commissioner. We submitted a written report, and I'll just do a couple of highlights. It's a busy meeting. We're very busy at the PIO right now. Obviously, a lot of people are asking questions about the petitions and the challenge reports and who's on the ballot and who's off the ballot, and are there hearings. So we're answering a lot of questions with regard to that. We also had the July periodic filing in the middle of July. While that's very busy for campaign finance, it's also very busy for the Public Information Office, because the reporters pay a lot of attention to who's filing and how much money they have and what's in the filing. So we answer a lot of questions on that. The Public Information Office also helped out in the petition filings at the front counter. Patrick said, in terms of what Todd said anecdotally and what Joe said, whether the scanning project was a success. He said from his vantage point, people were very pleased with the scanning idea. They were very happy to get scanned petitions back on a disc or emailed to them if the petition was small enough to fit inside an email. So he asked me to pass that along. Greg and Patrick have continued doing their Nysboe board visits. They visited Shenango and Dutchess during the past month. Greg also did an MVR training in Broome in June, and there's a major one scheduled in New York City in September. And I think that's about it. If there's any questions in addition to the written report.
Could I ask one? I've been concerned about getting out the message that, you know, people should register and vote. And I see a lot of public information lately, at least down in New York City, advertisements on the television. One is, you know, 4th of July is coming, remember you're American, something like that. And there was another one for something else. And I was wondering, at one time this board did get some on and worked with the counties in getting something on, just to remind people to register. It, after all, it is a, you know, a presidential year, and to vote. And I was wondering if there's anything we could do to move that along, or to reach out and get some networks that would be willing to do something like that.
I would absolutely be willing to do something like that. Typically what we have done in the past, at least for the time period that I've been here, is we absolutely do a press release just before each voter registration deadline. And depending on whether the press considers it an important election, it gets picked up and widely broadcast that there's a voter registration deadline, and people pay attention to it. A few years ago, when we had the new machines, we had some money to do some advertising. We did work with the New York State Broadcasting Association, and they were willing to help us, but it wasn't necessarily free. So that's been the primary obstacle to doing something more significant on either the radio or television to advertise that kind of thing more.
You can ask. The worst they can do is say no, or you need
Sure.
you need $10,000 and we don't have it. You know, but I think it might help. I think that a lot of people, you know, they say, oh, I'm not going to vote. You know, it doesn't make any difference. It's always the same old people, no matter who they are, or something like that. They give you answers like that. And because I belong to a lot of organizations, and I'm always reminding them about elections and things, and I just think that if there is some way the press, you know, whether it be the newspapers or the television, could do something closer to these dates, get people to register, remind people to vote, that's a good thing, and it's something we should really do if you can. I understand all the, you know, the things you have to overcome to get something done, you know, and if we don't, we don't. But I really would like to see something if it's possible.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Campaign finance, Liz Hogan.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I pretty much will stand on the report that's been submitted to you relative to the, you know, basically ongoing plugging along stuff that we do in campaign finance. You know, it's very repetitive, and I each month give you the numbers as to where we are. If you'll note, the registered active filers is up to almost 12,500. So, you know, that number is big. There were a couple of, I thought, things of note in the report. You know, the one thing that I'll point out, of course, is that we're entering the enforcement period for the non-filing of the July periodic. There were, on our original list, in order to prepare for the 5-day letter, there were just over 1,700 non-filers of the July periodic of registered filers. And, you know, that entailed a tremendous amount of work in-house The judgment for that is going to be initiated on August the 16th. Now, we have sent to each county lists of filers in their counties that have not filed, and we've asked them. We don't want to sue these people. The fine is now up to $1,000 for non-filing. The court will impose that $1,000 fine, and we really don't want to do this, but of course statutorily we're compelled to. But we try to enlist the assistance of the counties in order to contact people that have been delinquent in their filings to get them to file. As I said, the 16th was the day that we'll initiate the lawsuit. So we asked the counties to assist us in that. But other than that, it's basically the routine stuff that for each subunit in our group. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Or if Bill, if you'd like to talk about anything specific.
Yes, we're really in the homestead stretch on our operation system neutral software. We just have a few minor tweaks after the beta, so I anticipated the question. But we have a meeting scheduled for Thursday with IT to resolve just a couple of minor points, we think, and then at that point we'll be implementing a strategy. Obviously we have some logistics that we have to encounter relative to having over 12,000 active filers, and how do you handle that or accommodate that depending on how you release the new software. So we have some decisions to make internally on that, but I anticipate that somewhere in line with the general election filings, we should do a soft serve, so to speak, and we'll see where it takes us. But we're pleased by the results, and we're hoping
that'll bring us into the 21st century, and then we can start working on the upgrade to bring us current.
We're gonna need money for that, Commissioner.
But let's put it in the budget.
We do.
Yep.
Yeah, we do every year.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you, Bill. That's good news. And we'll keep working on that. And so Dave Loomis for Information Technology.
Good afternoon. I have nothing specific to add to my report. I've been fortunate to have a great staff that's been bringing me up to speed on a lot of the projects that we're working on. A lot of my time has been focusing on the MOVE Act and the data exchange project. So that's something that we're really targeting to get implemented and get up and running. So.
Well, thank you. We used to tell your predecessor that a short ITU report is good news.
I remember that.
Maybe you can work with him about what I asked before, getting the word out about registration and election. I think we should collect all the fines that they owe us on this, so we can pay to do that, but it doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work.
They don't let us keep the money.
Right.
All right, so first item on old business is discussion of independent expenditure regulations. I guess we have the draft reg that was published and my proposed amendment to include functional equivalents. Does anyone want to discuss this further today, or should we roll this over to September?
What do you think, Bob?
Oh.
Looks like September.
Okay, so we'll put this over to September. Next are the determinations regarding designating and nominating petitions and objections that the board has received.
I think the packet is all in your files, Commissioners. You have them all. And
right now, how do we break down the resolutions? Are there?
Perhaps
we were going to separate out.
Yeah.
The Howard Lieb item.
Yeah.
The first report you have is summary of determinations based upon objections, a two-page report.
Okay, and so that's Katz 94th Assembly District. The candidates are Katz 94th Assembly District valid.
Right, that's the first page.
Wider 98th Assembly District valid. McQuaid 98th Assembly District valid. OTB 98th Assembly District, Conservative valid, Independence invalid. Carter 101st Assembly District invalid. Scavo 108th Assembly District invalid. Java 114th Assembly District invalid. Kimmel, 115th Assembly District valid. Dupre, 115th Assembly District valid. Butler, 118th Assembly District valid.
What about for that?
Humiston, 100.
Butler above that.
Well,
There's two Butlers.
There's two Butlers.
Sorry.
One from
Okay.
Queens?
Is it Humiston? Is that how you pronounce
Correct.
it? 147th Assembly District valid. Valentine, 38th Senate District invalid. Breslin, 44th Senate District valid. Blake, 51st Senate District valid. All right, Lieb, we're splitting out. Esworthy, 52nd Senate District invalid. Moriarty, 62nd Senate District valid.
Well, did you want to move
All right,
the
so,
entire staff report with that one exception and vote separately on that? I
Oh,
assume?
we could do that if you want.
okay.
We
So
usually
that's
do it
the-
as a packet.
That's the motion before us?
That's the motion.
All right, those in favor of adopting that staff report, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's adopted. You have a staff report on prima facie review.
Well, we're going to come back to Lieb.
All right. So, you want to present the leave issue on why we separated it out? You want to do it, Bob?
Yeah, I'm just pulling the
Todd,
sheet.
or Paul?
The lead issue, it had been in, during the hearing on the Democrat petition, it was raised as a failure to follow our Part 6204.1 reg, that proof of service be made upon the candidate on or before the date the specification was filed with the state board. The state board objection was received in person on the 20th of July, and the affidavit of proof of service that was provided within the timely period clearly states that the person swore that it was on the 23rd day of July served within specifications upon the candidate. So the objection was that the specification was not timely, therefore we lack jurisdiction in order to rule on the underlying objection. So therefore, it would remain valid. So I don't know if you want to, with the motion.
And there was a prima facie review, and it was ruled valid on the prima facie review.
At that point,
The
correct.
documents that were filed, yeah.
Right. Okay.
And
You want to say anything else, Todd?
just with regards to petitions, or signatures, we don't routinely count the signatures until the general objections are filed. We don't wait for the specific objections. So, I mean, just based on the report, it does not have the sufficient number of signatures.
But we only did that not on the prima facie review, but only after an objection that was.
The general objection,
And
not
the
we don't
objection
wait for
was ruled jurisdictionally defective. All right. So procedurally, I'll, you want to make a motion?
No. Make a motion to.
You want to make a motion to add Lieb to the prima facie list? Is that the motion, Todd?
Yeah, because the recommendation is to invalid and add it to that. And the motion would be to invalidate, because there has to be 3 votes to invalidate. Starting is valid. The underlying petition starts as valid.
All right, so that's the motion. Is there a second?
Second. No, I shouldn't have.
No, it's all right. But
It
that gets
sounded-
that puts it on the table.
Right,
All right.
that's all I wanted to do.
All right. So those in favor of the motion, say aye.
So a vote yes would be to vote to invalidate the petition.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, one of those.
Commissioners Walsh and Peterson are voting to invalidate. Those opposed,
Aye.
nay.
Nay.
And
Nay.
Commissioners Aquila and
Nay.
Kellner are
I'm
voting.
sorry, nay.
Cautious when
Are
you
voting
vote.
no. So the motion fails by a 2-2 vote. All right. Now,
So, Commissioner, he's now on the ballot.
so he's on the ballot.
He remains on the
He
ballot.
remains on the ballot.
All right. Now we have the staff report on prima facie review, and I guess it's not necessary to read it, but I'll move that we adopt the staff report on the prima facie review. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And there is a staff report here on no acceptance, no authorization. Is that in
That's
addition to the prima facie review?
Correct.
So we need to, I move that we adopt that report, which would invalidate these 6 petitions based on the failure to file the required authorization. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'm
All right.
voting slowly.
No, I see Kim is back. Welcome back, Kim.
Thank you.
Any news to report?
Nothing that would change anything that you just did.
Okay.
So we need to email her now?
Yeah, we don't have to email you now.
No, nothing to email, yeah.
All right. Is there or any other business with respect to the designating and nominating petitions? All right. So the next item is, well, it says vote on the resolution to certify upgrades to ES and SDS 200 voting system and AutoMark. Anna, you reported earlier that that the staff is not prepared to recommend at this time.
We're withdrawing that resolution, yes.
All right. I think it's would be productive to have a short discussion, though, on the subject of the system upgrades, because this certainly was an issue of great alarm at the Election Commissioners Conference, and indeed the Election Commissioners Association passed a resolution urging us to very carefully consider how we go about implementing these upgrades. One of the issues is that the systems are not the same, that the Dominion upgrade is more complicated than the ES&S upgrade, because the Dominion upgrade requires not only the installation of this new voting system software, but it also changes the election management system and requires hardware upgrades as well in order to accommodate the new election management system.
Does our office agree with that?
Yeah. I
What's
know
your
you heard-
question, Evelyn?
I said, do we agree with that?
Well, I think those are facts that the.
Yeah.
that
No, I'd just like to know
the-
that we agree with
Yes.
those same facts.
uh,
Do you-
ES&S has been a little bit further along in the certification process. We were hoping that we'd be able to certify them today, but Anna, specifically what's remaining that prevents certification today?
With ES&S, it's the source code review. ES&S, in order to comply with some VVSG interpretations that the EAC made, has changed how their source code is structured, so that the review of the source code from one version to the next used to be able to happen with some tools and with manual review, and you could compartmentalize the changes and review those and make sure that nothing else was disaffected. Because of this move by ES&S to be more in line with what the EAC wants to see in source code, the source code review can't happen. There is no constructive way to look at those differences from one version of the source code to the next. So it's a completely manual. You can't use tools to identify that either. So it's become a completely manual process. And in that manual process, you only know from day to day what that day gives you and what that means to how long it's going to take you to finish the project. And the estimates that we got were, as far as that time period goes, were much more aggressive than the work has actually been able to demonstrate. So we're not prepared to have those final source code reports from our labs in the ES&S world I don't even know that we would have them in time for a web meeting that we had briefly discussed offline in the next week or 10 days. That manual source code is intense. We're working with ES&S to see if they can help identify for the labs where those changes are in their source code, so that would expedite the source code review. But
Well, that's dangerous.
I'm not a fan of that. You know how I feel about vendors, especially this week.
No, but it defeats the purpose of a source code review if the vendor is able to say, well, look at this.
Right.
But don't look at that.
Right. So while we reached out to them to see if there was anything that could happen, I'm not sure that what they're proposing would happen, we'd actually let happen. So and that conversation was only happening this morning. So we're just, it's hard to estimate when it would be done. Our last conversation with the lab yesterday was that perhaps in 2 weeks' time, this manual review would be completed on the ES&S side.
Now, assuming that we did certify this, at or before our next meeting, which I think we're talking about September 12th, is it still viable for at least some of the jurisdictions using ES&S to install this for the general election?
Well, our conversation with a couple of them has been positive. I don't know that all of the ES&S counties would be able to do so. Our concerns are twofold. One is there are items in that upgrade that counties specifically asked for that they'd find helpful in using it at the November election. They followed their vendor's direction. They've made some
Would you give some
incremental
examples of those upgrades that the counties had requested?
I'm not sure if I have the ES&S
Well, these were
ones here.
screens to access the ballot images was one of them.
That's one of them that would be restored in this, and that was one that was of particular interest to Rockland for the write-in features. And the New York City, well, I can certainly provide them to you. I'm just customer request. No, I have several pages of them. For example, a public count pop-up number that reports the number of ballots processed. These are
Right.
translated screens from ballot exception conditions updated at the customer's request. Synchronized translations to English text is more smooth.
Did New York City also request the breakdown by election district for the public counter numbers?
Yes.
So that's something that's important.
And the ability to find a write-in ballot, whether the voter has filled in the oval or not. Those are all features that would be of use. Whether this board was inclined to have this upgrade, if it was certified at the September meeting, implemented by those boards that could do so, that's a decision that the board would have to make, and perhaps we'd have to have a little more conversation with the ES&S counties.
And Commissioner Ward from Erie County is an ES&S user. Dennis, is there anything you want to add?
Do you want to
in
add
terms of-
anything? We'd love to hear.
Well, I think, although I was attending the conference of the commissioners, and I wasn't deputized to represent the ECA, I think I certainly could speak on behalf of the commissioners to say that at the very least there is grave concern at all levels throughout the state. Now that may differ from the size of the county and the types of machine that that county has, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't convey that to the board, that as you all know, it's no secret that this is a very busy year, the presidential election.
Absolutely.
And one of the concerns that, without getting into the technical side of it, because I'm relying on my technicians who are supposedly having a conference call within the hour with ES&S to talk about the practicalities of this. But I don't think that there is any secret that if there were anything that were done to these sometimes sensitive machines that would cause long lines at certain polling sites where machines, for whatever reason, weren't functioning and we had to shift to emergency ballot situations. As I mentioned to my counterpart, I'm calling in sick that day.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, the presidential year is difficult enough because there is heavy turnout in some areas more than others. And I would just hope that the board would consider that, and I realize that there are issues and there may have to reapply to the federal court and whatever, and I won't get into that, the legal niceties of that, but we certainly have heard from ES&S to say that they don't feel that the ES&S problem is as great as the Dominion problem. I don't know if that doesn't necessarily mean it's not a problem. I guess it's just that they're worse off than we are. If that is to be some sort of a comfort to us, I guess I will take small comfort in that. But nonetheless, I had some conversation with one of the representatives from the Brennan Center called me yesterday. I don't know how I was selected out of the directory, but I was lucky. And we had a very nice conversation, and I hopefully conveyed to her the fact that certainly from Erie County's perspective, and I don't speak for my counterpart, he's out of the country this week, so I don't want to say that this is our position, but we don't want to appear to be Chicken Little and run around and say, oh, it can't be done, it's terrible.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we also, if there is a choice between a smooth functioning election or the implementation of this new process, this new software upgrade, I think any commissioner that administers elections would say that we're going to opt for a smooth voting process at a very heavy turnout election rather than risk the possibility of chaos. I would emphasize just one more point that sometimes gets lost in 2 points maybe, on the practical level, down at the ground level where we are. Number one is that we are often jacks of all trades with our staff, and we are administering and doing other things other than this. And as the time approaches closer to the general election, if the product is not certified, and we are given the product sometime in September, let's just say, there is a little date in September called the primary. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's the third one this year, and we're getting good at it. But when the primary occurs, things happen. You know, we're doing other things, and like other counting ballots and the like. So please keep that in mind when you start to talk about the timeline that we're going to be on, because we could be tied up for weeks, if not days, after the primary. And then to start settling in and suddenly saying, oh, gee, it's the end of September, beginning of October, we're going to start to put this, or to install this, that could be problematic. And the other thing is a very practical thing. I know it doesn't always make the radar screen, but all of the boards go through a training of inspectors. Inspector training is, and I know in our county, is about 2/3 complete for this year. Most of the counties I know that I spoke to, a lot of them have completed it. And when you complete it, and they've all got their manuals, and they're all secure, and they know exactly what's going to happen, and then we say, oh yeah, but here's another insert, and then it has a way of sending shivers through the whole administration of the elections. And so I keep that in mind as you're considering what we would do or what we would ask the federal court on this particular case. That's from the ground level, and we certainly want to administer a good election first and foremost in November, and we hope that everybody keeps that in mind.
Thank you very much. Yes, we appreciate your insights.
Anna, on the issue of the litigation concerning the overvote notification screens, is there any way to separate out the screens so the screens can be revised in accordance with the settlement of the litigation without doing the full system upgrade?
We did talk about that. Bob Warren can certainly speak to it better, but if we did that, the vendors would have to take the time necessary to parse those out. They would still require source code review and the independent source code review and regression testing. That's the step to actually putting something before the four of you for you to vote on.
So you're saying it's not feasible?
I would not want to risk it, and then again having to deploy it for an election. Every election is critical, but certainly a presidential election. I'd rather not meet Chris Matthews under these circumstances.
So Paul, at this point, are we in a position where we really need to notify the plaintiffs of the litigation?
Our consent order indicates that if we feel we're not going to be able to implement this for the November election, we have to notify them by September 1st. they've already had communications with the Attorney General's office, who is representing the board in that litigation, and they are just abiding today's meeting. And we've had a very candid discussion, and I'm suspecting that they are watching it, as a lot of people are, and that's where we'll go. And
I think in the end, though, Paul, we have to think about the voter.
well,
And if the voter walks in to vote and sees chaos at the voting place, he turns around and walks out.
Hopefully, those who are watching this right now, if they've listened to even 2 words that Commissioner Ward said before us, I think puts it in very plain English as to where we're situated right now, and to jump into something where there's a possibility of a problem,
Right.
under tremendous stress during a presidential year, I think would be, it would be just wrong for us to, just
People
to
have
vote
to
on
come
this.
first.
The
The vote
timing
has
is
to
just
come
bad,
first.
and
Yes.
I, for one, certainly would not support it.
and the consent decree contains a proviso that if we're not going to be able to do it, we will endeavor in good faith to proceed to notify the voter of the vote issue as best we can.
We have signage in place from last year's election to do that. The inspectors were trained on that signage, so we're at least at a status quo where it comes to inspector training and voter interaction. And there are overvote screens, such as they are, to whatever extent anyone wants to like them or not, are still on the system. It's not that the system is without a notice to the voter. But that implementing this is of concern to us in election operations as well. We don't mean to mitigate anything. We don't mean to not pay attention to the concerns that the county boards have. We have them as well. Obviously, the 4 commissioners do. My only concern is that we still proceed on as conscientious a path as we can to certify this as soon as we can, because that would enable the county boards to assess the steps required to implement the upgrade, to make the purchases that they need, because if we waited to certify until after the general election, then we're waiting on pre-clearance, and if there are special elections that arise as a result of this general election, we're not going to be able to use this newer system in that, and I don't want to be there. I don't want this board to be there at that point in time. So the sooner we can get our package to the extent that we're comfortable with it. It's exhaustive testing, you've heard us say that before, but clearly our testing reveals problems as recently as last week in what the vendor put before us in Dominion's case, and that's important for people to know. Contrary to what the vendors portray at these conferences, especially when we're not there to countermand their conversation, it's important for people to know that. But we would like to get a package before the board so that the county boards can then be reasoned in how they approach the upgrade and do that in a way that's timely for any elections that may come up early in the year. And any elections that they loan their equipment out for, village, library, school district, etc. All of those would be key.
And election operations is still doing the follow-up on the audits of the overvotes?
Yes, we have 2 issues in New York City, the 13th Congressional District, and we're still looking at data, and we've requested more data on the difference between the hand count and the machine counts in that 27th SD special election in New York City. We have launched, we've come up with a protocol for reviewing elections around the state, and we are, again, pleased to say that Schenectady and Saratoga have offered to be our pilot projects for monitoring elections. We're going to randomly select counties for each election, have them randomly select election districts and scanners within their counties, and we will look at ballot images, overvotes, anomalies in vote counts, look at their audit results, their test deck process, etc. And that will give us, I think, a much more hands-on approach to monitoring the use of the systems and getting feedback directly from each individual county moving forward. So we'll be doing that in those 2 counties with the federal primary that was held in June. We'll be doing it again with 6 counties for the September primary.
Well, I certainly concur with Commissioner Peterson's remarks, and so that's a consensus for all of us at this point. To proceed cautiously.
Cautiously, we must say that, and it's not mandatory for this year. I think we have to say that.
Well, right now, there's nothing certified, so they can't do it until we certify. But
I just
And
feel.
I guess that's the point we've said, is that we'll proceed cautiously and,
Yes.
and
Is there any way I can make a statement before you consent? Because there's another side to the story. I know that you're about to approve it, so I'm not going to
Okay,
change
go
your
ahead.
mind. But I feel like I need to say something before. My name is Sue Cohen. I'm with Voting Access Solutions. I've worked for 5 years on the challenges of disability access to the vote. Now, in the Dominion, I'm really only going to speak about the Dominion machine. I'm not an expert on the Automark. I have worked with Dominion as a consultant for the last 3 years to do upgrades, and I helped co-author the upgrades to the ballot marking device. Those upgrades were a result of a huge influx of negative testimonials and disenfranchised voters, especially blind voters, who these machines were intended for. Spent 3 years authoring those upgrades, and I guess I'm going to express disappointment from myself and the vote disability community, because that means that the same voters who've been disenfranchised are going to continue to be disenfranchised for the presidential election. A great amount of time and effort has been put in to try to educate poll workers, to educate voters on using
so
these.
specifically, which upgrades are you talking about?
We're talking about specifically the ballot marking device upgrades that improve the instructions and improve the navigation of the machine. I have a book full of testimonials of difficulty voters have experienced, anywhere from a 45-minute vote to an hour-and-a-half vote. We've created voter guides. We've tried to adhere to the ADA, to give reasonable accommodations, but this was a great amount of effort that went into both on Dominion's part and my part to improve voting for these individuals. Now, one more year, the presidential election of disenfranchised voters is really a huge setback. And the truth is, the disability community has lost faith in these machines, as is shown by the really low usage of these machines. And I don't have to say that a tremendous amount of taxpayer resources go into these machines. And by 2013, no disrespect, people have just totally lost faith. So we put all this effort and this money into these upgrades, and by that time, nobody is going to be interested in using them. Now, on September 12th, there's a huge meeting in Onondaga County of the disability community. I was really hoping, and Jim Dixon, the national, we call him the voting guru from the American Person with Disability, helped write the Help America Vote Act with Chris Dodd. He's the keynote speaker. I was really hoping to be able to show the prototype or at least announce that these changes were going to happen. This community could sue. I'm going to be very honest with you. They're angry as can be. I must admit, as a consultant for Dominion, I try to prevent that from happening. I'm no longer a consultant with Dominion, and truthfully, if they're angry enough, they can get pro bono attorneys who will jump on this. So I think there's bigger issues here. I'd like to see a solution for the BMD portion of this. I don't know if there is one, but I would like the board to consider a solution, because you're going to have a whole room of very angry people. So thank you for your time.
That's a helpful comment, Sue.
Commissioner, may I respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
With all due respect, if Ms. Cohen and others are dissatisfied with this decision today, they should take it up with Dominion. Dominion did not submit their source code in a timely way to us. They did not submit their upgrade to us when ES&S did, which was very early on in the process. And Dominion did not even submit the source code for their BMD to a lab for certification until last week. So if there is any disappointment from you as a consultant for Dominion or for anyone who uses a Dominion system, it should be taken up with Dominion. This board has done everything humanly possible to work with these vendors, to get a product out there that the community can work with. You have said repeatedly you've had issues with these scanners. I have yet to have anything submitted by you to our unit, no conversation between you and Bob Warren to address any of these issues that you've raised. We're happy to do that. But to say today that you're disappointed in this board is a disservice to this board and the staff involved in doing the work on these voting systems. Your dissatisfaction should be directed to your employer, Dominion Voting Systems, not this board. And I apologize.
Thank you. The bottom line, we're out of time, and to do something under the constraints that put on us at this juncture, it would be foolhardy.
All right, so I think that's our consensus for right now.
You want to let it go down, because
well, I think there's nothing to vote on.
Nothing to vote on.
And I think we're all agreed on how to proceed. And I certainly take to heart Sue's comments.
Oh, absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and as Anna pointed out, some of the upgrades are functions that the county boards have asked for, but nothing before its time. We want to make sure, as I say, in my law firm, we would not upgrade our Microsoft Word the day before a major deadline.
And I think that these electronic devices, all of them, are always having upgrades. We will face this, maybe not me, but we will face this from years to come.
All right, well, all right, next is the vote on the resolution to adopt the amendments to the rules and regulations. This was to update the address.
This is to update the address. It was done on a consensus basis upon the expectation that there would be no comment negative in nature. In fact, the 45 days have well run, and there have been no comments at all. So the board is now free to adopt the change of address, notwithstanding that we've been here a couple of 3 months.
Those in favor of the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I hate the change of address. Like our all overs is better.
All right.
When you vote aye, you voted against it.
Item D, discussion of the election night poll site procedures and ballot redesign. I had asked that this item go on. I was hopeful that I would have a revised draft, but Assemblyman Kavanaugh, to his credit, worked very hard in working with the City of New York to try to revise the bill that we had drafted earlier this year. And it did pass the Assembly, and it did not pass the Senate. My own view is that the bill in its current form is better than the existing law, but has a lot of problems built into it. The major concern that I have is that in his effort to accommodate New York City, that there are numerous provisions in the bill that have separate election night closing procedures for New York City and the rest of the state. And my own view is that there should be a uniform statute, and if there are legitimate options that are local options, then those local options ought to be available to everybody, but that there's nothing about election night closing that is unique to New York City that would justify having a separate statute for the city. So I would hope that this could be a priority within the next couple of weeks to try to get the staff to go through this bill and revise Assemblyman Kavanaugh's revisions so that there'll be a uniform set of procedures and they're consistent with the actual capabilities of the machines. So that we can then turn around and say, okay, these are the procedures and everybody has to follow them. Instead of the status quo now where there are so many inconsistencies that to a great degree the counties feel that they're on their own.
Counties
follow?
want
Was there a revised version of the bill introduced after?
Yeah, they're up to a B version, so there were actually
Okay.
2 amendments
Yeah.
from our
Since it was
draft.
passed, or?
No. But the version that passed the Assembly, but
Right.
not the Senate, as I say, it's not the same as what we drafted. And in some places, it's better than what we drafted. One of the things in our draft that we've overlooked is the statute says at the close of the polls, the inspectors shall do certain procedures in a particular order. But if you go to our website, our procedures don't follow that order.
That's a problem.
Yeah, and then as I say, there are half a dozen places in the revised Kavanaugh bill that have a separate rule for New York City, and I don't want to repeat myself, but,
No,
I think the problem here is who's actually going to get this legislation straightened out. And as between counsel for the Senate, counsel for the Assembly, the governor's office, and us, the expertise is here. And that if we don't do it, we're going to be able to do it better than anybody else, in my view. Maybe that's presumptuous on my part.
I always thought, maybe very wrongly, I guess, is that each county, like for years, I was an inspector in New York City, that those procedures, when we closed, were given to us by the New York City Board of Elections, and we followed them. It was simple. We're nothing, you know, if you graduated from elementary school, you can do them. But I didn't know we had to have there was a state law that governed them. I really didn't. And I don't know why it's necessary for every county around the state to have to do it exactly the same way. You know, really, I just don't see that.
Well, right now, there's a law that requires them.
Well, it didn't pass.
But the law, no, the existing law is much worse than this, even with this revision.
You know, I think sometimes stick your hand in enough times you mess things up, you know.
And Commissioner, New York City is citing the existing statute as a reason for very complicated closing procedures, which I call Rube Goldberg procedures.
I think it's very simple.
And are unnecessary.
Right.
But a lot of counties just did their own procedures or followed the procedures that the State Board has recommended that are much simpler but don't necessarily conform to the letter of the statute. In the eyes
And
of
you
the
want us to vote
lawyers.
on that today?
No,
No.
Because I don't have my draft ready. But
No,
I'm
I don't
asking
either.
that the staff do work on this before September 12th, if at all possible, to try to go through,
And I would,
to get the Kavanaugh bill to conform to what our recommended procedures.
and I would urge that the procedures be as simplistic, I know this sounds ridiculous, as simple as they can be. You know, check the number on the machine, check the number that, you know, I mean, there's enough ways to make it simple. Without making it, people read it and they say, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this, we don't want that.
All right.
I hope nobody takes offense by that, but people are tired by the end of the day, and it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and done.
Okay.
Yeah, no, certainly the issue with regards to the poll closing procedures was raised very late in the session, which is always difficult for any kind of bill to give it ample time when other issues are also being debated, so. And the fact that there are existing procedures, so
Right.
albeit not as simple as they could be, I think we can all agree on that. So, you know, to try
Well, they're
to.
never 100% simple, I
No,
would say.
no,
But it's
and
good
putting
to-
it in plain language is hard, and not
Yes.
skipping steps and not making
Right.
assumptions is difficult to provide for all of that, so. But certainly, you know, if you have a draft, I mean, I know that Bob had worked with you, some of them very closely on that.
Well, so I'd ask operations and legal
Yes.
if they can spare the time to
Put something
try to
together.
work on this.
Sure.
Let me add also, the legislative agenda was a major subject at the election commissioners conference. The election commissioners overwhelmingly again renewed their number one priority request is to get the June primary. And
Was what? I'm sorry.
is to have the legislature approve the June primary bill.
Oh, okay.
And there are two main concerns. First is the historic concern with the commissioners that doing it in June provides more time, the less need for overtime, and the ability to use seasoned staff because of spacing out the distance between the primaries. So even for next year, they're asking for a June primary. The second thing
May
is
I just
that,
say this,
no,
to the
just
June-
let me finish. Just let
Okay.
me finish. The second thing is that the reason for moving up the primary is to give military voters time to get their ballots, and there's no reason why military voters should essentially be discriminated against in local and state primary elections to get their ballots in time.
I was going to mention that.
All right, I'm sorry. So that is still the association's #1 legislative priority, even for 2013. And of course, they're very concerned that if it's not pressed, the legislature might let it go until late in 2014, and then everybody will be scrambling again. So that's #1. #2, the association did pass a resolution asking us to work on the election night poll procedures bill, and that passed unanimously. And they also unanimously passed a resolution endorsing the ballot usability act that passed the Assembly, but also got hung up in the Senate at the closing hours. And then they had a number of items that are left from last year's agenda, but are lower down in the priority, but still something that they'll be pushing. Thank you for indulging me on that report. Our last item on the agenda are the determinations from the Campaign Finance Unit. We have the long list of numbers here. Does anybody want to discuss any of them in executive session? No. All right. So I'll move the adoption of the staff report.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. And I believe there's been discussion that our next meeting would be September 12th.
Correct, yes.
Which is the day before the primary.
Just the one item, Terry did bring the link to the website and indicated that the applications are on the link, and you can't, and that's the link, and you can see the top of the list, but I think it's at the bottom of the list, but she confirmed that question you had earlier, that they're there, the applications.
What section do you navigate through?
Sorry, I had 4.
It's from the Harbor page.
It's not hard, even I was able to find it.
Yeah, but it starts with 2007.
I think
The current one's there?
I think it's the opposite. The most recent, maybe we could organize to put on the top and the older on the bottom or something like that.
Oh, alphabetical by vendor?
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
We can do it chronologically. We'll talk to Dave Loomis and John Conklin about
It
it.
could be
All
reordered
right,
any way
great.
you want. I think the EAC does it alphabetical by vendor too,
I think so.
just for
Yeah,
people
we
who
followed
looking
their
for a
lead,
vendor.
but as we know, that's
Thank you very much. I
Somewhat
appreciate it. Thank you, Terry, for pulling that out.
I can find it stuff on the website too.
All
Well,
right, so I think if there's no further business, we'll adjourn. Those in favor of adjourning? Aye. All right, thank you all.
Anything that is done.